Welcome back to How to Start a Cannabis Farm. Step 5, permits. So, fucking permits, right? God damn, boy, I'll tell you what. That's really the only way to start this shit off because, man, I swear, you need a permit for fucking everything in life. Everything. Golly. So, some of this shit you might need permits for. You might need a permit to put some electricity in your shit, to harvest stuff, to build stuff, to even access stuff. Alright, let's get into this. So, the first thing I got here is my commercial access permit. That was a requirement by the roads department. You will need an electrical permit if you're planning on running new wires, and rightfully so. People are burning shit down, especially out here, up in Oregon, Northern California. Man, you know, this doesn't even really have to do technically with the electrical permits, but it's a story anyways. I had a buddy of mine that was living out in Northern California, and one of their neighbors was the ones that started that giant fire a couple years ago in Northern California that burned like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. Like the big one. And not the one that burned Mendo down. But yeah. Not just this most recent one, but the one before that one. Apparently it was these. Well, I'm not gonna even say shit because yeah. So anyways, I guess a propane shower got left on, and you know, shit happens, things blow up. So there's a reason, even though this shit's off grid, you know, things still happen. There's a reason why you have to get an electrical permit. And it's really for out of the safety for everybody else. You know, I came into all this stuff thinking, oh my god, I need fucking permits, blah, blah, blah. Bitching just the way that I was in the very beginning. But as you start moving forward with this, you realize that a lot of these are just safety precautions because people are just, who are just getting shit done, you know, they just rigged it up and it worked, and you know, it worked for a little bit and things burn down and blow up, and yeah. Getting an electrical permit, definitely get it done. Obviously get your shit done by a licensed electrician. It just goes without saying. You may need a grading permit, depending on how much dirt's being moved, depending on what, you know, now getting a grading permit, usually depending on the amount of dirt you need to move, may require an engineered I guess grading plan, which essentially shows what they'll do is they'll come out and it's like $7,000 or some shit, but they'll come out and basically take measurements of, you know, your entire property, your elevation, your slope, and get all marked out and show what it is currently, and then get an idea of what it's supposed to look like afterwards and draw those plans up, and then basically be there throughout all this shit. It's fucking expensive. The purpose for that is for erosion control. There have been many mudslides out here. Terraces have collapsed. My terrace fucking collapsed, like not in the entire thing, but the way that my terrace was designed was the back part of the terrace was slightly higher than the front part, just so that the shadows coming off of the front plants weren't directly on top of the ones behind it. So, you know, we're trying to make use of what we got. And at the same time, it means, well, if we don't have to move that much, you know, extra dirt, then great, we don't have to move that extra dirt. And it's not much. It was only like a foot difference in the terrace, you know, the terrace height. But what happened during the rainy season, well, that basically created an edge. And the water followed the edge right off the fucking terrace. And that was fine for a little bit. And then it collapsed. And then we had this giant gaping hole that was like a giant V that slowly eroded, half the terrace. And not half, I'm exaggerating. Like a few feet, really. And so once everything dried up, we had to come back in and put more dirt in there and pack that in. And, the reason why we couldn't do any seed at the time, it was just too wet. But what we did is we went out there and we put a bunch of straw on top and then put cover cropping in, and that's one of the things that you're gonna have to plan for and actually answer. And that's one of the things I had to answer on my specific plot plan. I've got a giant terrace / bank that's written into my plot plan, and it's specifically for erosion control. Like, that's the only purpose, is to make sure that this terrace is so long because it's because everything is so high, and make sure nothing just collapses and floods me and whatever. So again, that may be an issue. Another thing, if you're going to be chopping trees and shit, I would recommend going to your Department of Forestry and getting something called a harvest permit. Harvest permit, exactly what you imagine. It's permit to harvest trees. But if you decide to sell those trees, you can do so. Again, you'll have to show tax and all that shit at the end of the year. But it allows you to send them to the mill or sell them as firewood if you'd like to do that. Or you can do what I did and keep it. Like, well, I'm an organic gardener. I'm gonna use all that shit, all of it, that or firewood. And hell, I'll use the wood ash, reintroduce that back into the soil. What else? A building permit. So all right, there's like development permits and building permits. If you are, and depending on your county and whatnot, if your property has an agricultural exemption, because cannabis is an agricultural crop, and technically you should be exempt. The buildings that you are putting up do not have to be engineered, or they don't have to have engineered plans, which from a greenhouse perspective adds, depending on the size, usually a couple $1,000s. If you have an agricultural exemption, you don't have to have a building permit, but you have to have, I believe, a development permit. You'll have to double check, but just know that there are some exemptions for buildings, which again, you may not have to have the physical building permit, but you will have to show something that is, something's being done there. What else? Well, seems that's about it.